Jennifer DiPasquale is a registered dietitian. She wants to talk this morning, for one thing, about diabetes sessions that she's having for people. And if you are diabetic or have a loved one who's diabetic, or even if you have it in your family, and the genes are there. We were talking about genes on the way up.
Yes.
You best be aware. And Jennifer DiPasquale is with Abraham Lincoln Memorial Hospital, serves in the capacity of a dietitian. And we're happy to have you with us this morning, Jennifer. And tell us about your diabetes sessions. I have a son-in-law who's diabetic, and his father was diabetic. And of course, we all have people that we've met along the way who suffer from this, and it's an insidious thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Yeah, good morning, everyone. This is Jennifer. I'm also a certified diabetes educator. I got that designation last December. Yeah, diabetes is taking the world over by storm.
It is.
Is it because of the obesity situation that they keep talking about on the
That is
television?
why there's such a rapid increase, yes. And part of the reason is because a lot of the foods that we eat are over-processed with more fat, calories, and salt than what we need. The lack of activity, the way children spend an average of 7 hours a day, several days a week, sitting, being sedentary, watching TV, playing games.
Well, their bedrooms look like Best Buy Annex or something, you know. Gee, how are you going to get them out of there?
I know. You have to take all that stuff away and shove them outside like they did when people were younger.
Yeah.
Go outside, when you get home from school, you don't come back in until it's dinner.
Well, Jennifer,
people active.
Just a little side issue, if I might ask the question. We're aware there seems to be a tremendous problem as far as overweight is concerned in this country. You walk down an average street and you see a lot of above average posteriors and so forth. Seriously, I don't want to make light of that at all, because it's a very serious thing. We have a real, do we have a nationwide problem with health care and people taking care of themselves and diet?
Absolutely. And part of the, 1 in 3 adult Americans is overweight or obese, 1 in 3.
That's awful. That's scary.
Yeah.
And it's only going to get worse unless our healthcare system and the way that we view things as a culture changes. Most insurances will not pay for preventative care as far as getting in a weight loss program, paying for fees to go to a gym to get exercise, seeing a dietitian for a meal plan. And so a lot of people don't have the ability to pay for such things themselves, and it goes unnoticed. One of the main things, well, like President Obama and his wife Michelle, they have been really working on the Child Nutrition Initiative, trying to bring it into the schools. Actually have dietitians working with schools, and they're doing that at test sites right now.
They don't have dietitians?
No.
Well, who does the meal planning? Oh, the government surplus, maybe.
Well, like we are a small county here. There's one dietitian FTE for the whole county. That counts for everything. There's no dietitian with our health department.
Really?
There's no dietitian who does the meals for the school system. There's not. In other larger areas, like in Bloomington, they have 2 full-time dietitians that write all the menus, do the nutrition analysis for the school system. They have nutrition curriculum that goes in there from a certified professional who writes it and tests it out to make sure it actually promotes knowledge and learning. We just don't have that in this county. It's not that it certainly would be available if people were interested. I've done things in the past, like with the Heart Smart Healthy Teen through the health department, going out and teaching nutrition for the schools, but it really needs to become part of the curriculum on a regular basis, just like the physical activity needs to be part of a regular curriculum and more often for a lot of places.
And ironically, when there have to be school cutbacks, so many times they'll knock off some PE.
Oh yeah.
And you can't have it both ways. You can't have no exercise and no overweight. It just isn't going to happen, you know.
Well, and I know the school that my children go to, which is a wonderful school here in town, they only have PE once a week.
Yeah, right.
You know, growing up, I had PE 5 days a week, and I was still fat. So, you know, imagine it doesn't promote good.
Well, let's bring back in the genetics that we were mentioning on our trip to Atlanta here. Is there anything to being genetically predisposed to being heavier,
Yes,
or is
very
it
much.
that we learn our eating habits, of course, at our mother's knee?
Well, I mean, that's the big controversy, is it nature and nurture? But from what the most recent consensus is that around 70% of your metabolism is genetically predisposed. But there's 30% there that you have complete control over. So you may tend to be obese, you may tend to have a slower metabolism, but it doesn't mean that you don't have any control over it and you can't do anything about it. It's you know, some of us are tall, thin, short, fat, athletically inclined or not. You just gotta, you know, take what you're given and do the best you can with it.
Getting back to diabetes, we're just jumping from hither to yon, I'm afraid, here. Maybe Bill can organize us. I'd like to ask about this age onset type diabetes. My grandma, when she was in her 90s, became diabetic. Now, Grandma always liked a cookie, you know, so that was good. But and of course, by the time you're in your 90s, and if you become diabetic, I don't think you have to give up donuts, you know.
Well, that's how I look at it too.
But what's the difference between that and people who have juvenile diabetes, which is an awful thing, and just diabetic diabetes?
Right. Well, we used to call juvenile onset and adult onset. Now we actually categorize it into type 1, which means you have to take insulin from outside the body, or type 2, which means you don't.
Having nothing to do with age?
Not anymore. No, we have people developing type 2 at age 8 and 10 years old because of the obesity, the high cholesterol, the inactivity, and the genetic factor.
What's
and poor
with
food
cholesterol
choices.
and diabetes?
Oh, have you heard of the metabolic syndrome, syndrome X, cardiometabolic syndrome? All these things are the same.
I don't know those words. Do you know those words, Bill?
I'd like for you to spell them.
Forget.
Well, there's high blood pressure or hypertension, high blood fats or hypercholesterolemia, obesity, and then high blood sugar. All four of those things work together for that syndrome. And sometimes heart disease or cardiac disease pops up first. Sometimes diabetes pops up first. Sometimes you have to get all three of the others going before diabetes pops up. But they're all part of the same spectrum of disease.
Really?
And a lot of people don't understand that. So if you have high blood pressure and high cholesterol, please make sure you keep active, make good food choices, keep your weight under control, because your risk of, it's right around the corner. And what we've learned now is that have you heard of prediabetes? We used to call it borderline. Prediabetes is this window of time, sometimes very short, where you start seeing your blood sugar getting high, and it's usually because you have these other conditions going on too, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and overweight or fat. You have this short window of time where you can actually change your lifestyle and reverse it and not develop the full-blown diabetes. Maybe for a very long time, maybe if not forever. But people need to be aware that diabetes and heart disease are related, and that because the damage that's done from having uncontrolled blood sugar, uncontrolled blood fats, and uncontrolled blood pressure, all together, they damage your blood vessels. Okay. They can attack at the micro or very small vessel area, and that's when you have people who get the loss of feeling in their finger and toes. They can attack at a large vessel area where you get heart disease, strokes, a loss of kidney function, liver function, stuff like that. It's very serious, and the physicians are doing a much better job of identifying those risk factors. So if you have things going on that put you at higher risk for heart disease or diabetes, they're going to test your blood fat, your blood pressure, your blood sugar much more carefully. 8-10 years ago when they first started seeing this, they didn't routinely test for those things. Now when you go into the doctor, if you're over the age of 50 or if you're at risk for diabetes, they're going to be checking your average blood sugar or your A1C every year as a screen, or checking your fasting blood sugar every 6 months to a year, just to see, because they know you're at such high risk for developing diabetes.
Jennifer, would it be fair to assess that the dietary problems that we seem to have, that we've kind of blown up, so to speak, greatly more present than we used to have? Would it be fair to assess that perhaps it's because of our more frenetic lifestyle and families don't sit down by necessity because
Absolutely.
we have two parents both working, maybe different shifts, and the family style, as I was fortunate enough to know, is rare as opposed to common today?
Absolutely. It's because we don't make the time to have family cooked meals that are not over processed. The good news is that there are quite a few food companies that are finally realizing now, the food manufacturers, they really don't need to put all that extra junk in our food. We aren't benefiting from it at all. If you notice that like Campbell's and Kraft have and General Mills have launched campaigns in the past year, taking out the sugar in kids' cereal slowly but surely, taking out the salt in our soups and processed foods, taking out the trans fat a year and a half ago. Everybody got rid of the trans fat because they started putting it on labels.
If you read labels on canned food, vegetables, man, a quarter of that can is salt, I think.
And it's not going to make it significantly more expensive for the food companies to change the way they do it unless we demand it. If we keep buying those over-processed foods, they're going to keep supplying us with them.
Yeah.
I think, I'm not big on government intervention at all. It's not one of my pleasant things to talk about.
Same page there.
However,
you're going to have to call somebody who cares about that, because I don't think it's the government.
You're in the right department up here.
Well, however, there are some things where I think the government does need to be more proactive on legislation, and that comes into food manufacturing and the food that they allow us to buy. I don't think that we should ban soft drinks or candy or cookies or junk food, not at all. I think that they should give incentives to the companies that produce them and provide them to make them healthier, so it would benefit everyone and not cut jobs or put anybody out of business or make us feel deprived either.
Is fast food the villain it's made out to be?
I don't think it's a villain. You can fit it in, fast food in, as long as you have an active lifestyle and have it occasionally. But because of the way our lives are so frenzied, I know lots of people who have kids in sports. They aren't home for dinner but once a week if they're lucky, and then they're getting it late. So what do? You want to go for something convenient, something that tastes good, and a lot of times you get those convenience and fast foods that are just not healthy and give you twice as many calories and fat and salt as you need.
Well, we thank you very, very much for donating your time to us this morning.
It's my pleasure.
I'll have Judith pay you on the way out the door. Thank you a lot.
I'll take a cat with me.
Jennifer DiPasquale, representing the Abraham Lincoln Memorial Hospital Dietary Department. And she has a wealth of knowledge, and if you have any questions, I'm sure she'd be happy to try to answer them for you. Thank you, Jennifer. We're shut for a commercial break.